My name is Clayton Dube. I'm with Professor Chi from Occidental College, and we'll be talking about Taiwan. We'll talk about Taiwan today. We'll talk about the past. And our focus is going to be on the cross-strait relationship looking forward. So that's where we're headed. But I thought that it would be important to talk a little bit about American politics. And so I have no idea who's going to win. I have a preference for who should win. But I will make one prediction that I guarantee you is going to be correct. Absolutely guarantee. Whoever wins is not going to win by the same amount that Taiwan's current president, Tsai Ing-wen, won when she was elected president back in March. She received 56% of the vote. Next in line, Eric Chu got 31% of the vote. So a 25% gap. That won't happen in the November election here. Has there been much discussion among the presidential candidates this year about Taiwan and about Taiwan's relationship with the mainland? No, no. But that wasn't always the case. Back in 1960, when Richard Nixon and John Kennedy were running for president, Taiwan was the center of the discussion. This was a time when there were regular bombardments and there was question whether or not the United States would defend Taiwan. It absorbed all the discussion. But in recent years, there hasn't been near this attention. One reason, of course, is because the relationship across the Taiwan Strait has improved so dramatically. In 1958, 1960, there's no trade. The only people who were crossing the strait were doing so, they were floating on basketballs and things like that. Today, of course, there's constant travel between Taiwan and the mainland. Tremendous investment, tremendous amounts of business, right? So the situation is very, very different. And yet, still a subject for us to pay a lot of attention to. Professor Chi teaches in the Politics Department and is chair of the East Asian Languages and Cultures Department at Occidental. And he has deep expertise, and so we're extremely fortunate to have this opportunity to talk with him. So my first question for him, and we'll have a few questions from me and then your questions, is why is Tsai Ing-wen president?
Wow. Yeah, before we get started, I'm very glad to see this panel is very well attended, reasonably well attended. You know, Taiwan has been marginalized in the international environment in the East Asia. There are a lot of high-level summits going on so far this year. Taiwan being totally excluded. So I thought this panel would be less attended. Yeah. So we have a competition right now. There are 3 panels concurrently held right now. Yeah. So back to the question. Yeah. Well, actually, it's in January 16. I was there casting my ballot during the presidential election. As Clay just talked about, she won big, a landslide, 56-31, right? However, if you understand Taiwanese politics, if you follow that over the years, you should know that there are 2 reasons for that. Yeah. Number one, the basic pool, the basic supporters of the green, so-called the Green Coalition. I hope all of you are familiar with the term. The Green Coalition, the Pan-Green, P-A-N, coalition, referring to the DPP, the Tsai Ing-wen's party, Democratic Progressive Party, and their affiliated satellite organization, that's a minor, smaller party. So altogether, we call the Pan-Green Coalition, usually occupying about 45 to 48% of the Chinese constituency. So this time, like in the 2000, there was a split among the candidates from the other side, the opposite. We call the pan, again, P-A-N, pan blue. We have a pan green and a pan blue, very colorful, like American politics. We have red states, we have blue states, right? The same thing over there. There was a division. So there were two candidates from the pan blue running. James Song and Zhu Lilun, the mayor of New Taipei City. So naturally, very well expected. Even people this time, last year, they saw Tsai Ing-wen's upcoming victory for sure. So 56%, a little bit surprising, but surprise, not surprise, due to those two reasons. Yeah. But however, from the outside world, especially from the Beijing perspective, there's a very important implication. The one we're going to talk about, the 92 consensus. Okay, I hope you heard about the term. The 92 consensus has become the core of the tension between China and Taiwan today. By getting 56% of the votes from the Taiwanese constituency, there's a perception that the majority of the Taiwanese, they are endorsing Tsai Ing-wen's stance about the consensus. Basically, the consensus is about one China. We can more complicated than that. Yeah. I'm sorry. Tsai Ing-wen's anti-consensus sentiment. So that's why a lot of people will interpret with the victory, kind of landslide victory. Tsai Ing-wen will go for it, go for the embark on her journey to independence. But it was not the case. Before I finish this round of my talk, in a nutshell. Many people ask me how I compare Tsai Ing-wen with an American politician or with her predecessor, with Chen Shui-bian or Ma Ying-jeou. In a nutshell, Tsai Ing-wen is a pragmatist. Tsai Ing-wen is not an ideologue. You know what is the ideologue? What is the ideologist? Tsai Ing-wen is not, right? Referring to those people who have an emotional attachment. They have a lifelong devotion to their cause. So Li Denghui is an ideologue. But Tsai Ing-wen is not ideologue. Tsai Ing-wen is very pragmatist, like Hillary Clinton. Yeah. So, pragmatism means very practical, right? Has a holding very pragmatic view about the world around you. So, if necessary, Tsai Ing-wen is willing to change. So that's it. So let me stop here. Yeah. Clay.
Yeah. So, with regard to kind of the alignment within Taiwan, the overwhelming majority of people are not in favor of changing the status quo. They overwhelmingly say, let's keep things as they are, and very few people call for independence today or for unification with the mainland today, overwhelmingly in the middle. And so Tsai Ing-wen, as part of her campaign, said, I will maintain the status quo. I accept the status quo. And she also said that in 1992, representatives from Taiwan and the mainland met and talked about the relationship across the strait. And so she spoke of this, and she also said, I would be the president of the Republic of China, and I intend to uphold the Constitution of the Republic of China. And in the Constitution, there's one China, the Republic of China. So she put that forward, and so that's an example of the pragmatism that Professor Ji was just talking about. And so she wins. She wins this overwhelming victory. It came after an unprecedented meeting, of course, in November of last year. In November of last year, the president of Taiwan and the president of the People's Republic met in Singapore, something that never happened before, right? But Tsai Ing-wen wins. Now, the mainland has said that she must accept the 92 consensus. Could you tell us what this consensus is and what the chances of her accepting it are?
Okay, let me keep long story short. We should know that before 1990s, let me quickly go over this. There were the 3 no policies implemented by the late President Jiang Jingguo at the time. Very clearly, 3 no's, which is 3. No communications, no contacts, and no compromises, very clearly. But at the beginning of the 1990s, we saw a little bit of light on the horizon. In 1991, concurrently, both sides of the Taiwan Strait, they set up a semi-official organization. If you are familiar in Chinese, 海基会, 海协会. 海基会is SEF, SEF, Straight Exchange Foundation. On the Taiwan side, on the other side, it's a counterpart. It's called ARATS, ARATS, Association for Relations Across the Taiwan Strait. So those are the two semi-official organizations set up to handle technical aspects, not political, technical aspects of the cross-strait relationship. This is 1991. So here comes 1992, a kind of a breaking through at the time. The following year, 1992, the representatives from both SEF and the ARATS, they met in the British Hong Kong at the time, still 5 years before the turnover. Otherwise, it's impossible. They met in Hong Kong. Then out of that historical meeting, we have this so-called the 1992 consensus. So very quickly, what is the 1992 consensus? First and foremost, both sides agree with the one China policy. However, they have a different emphasis. On the China side, they say one China only. But on the Taiwan side, they say 一中各表, one China with different interpretations. So therefore, it's a very awkward situation. Think about this. We have one China, yeah. One China with a different interpretation. So the China on Beijing, they emphasize the first component, one China. So whereas Taiwan, especially Ma Ying-jeou, he being considered the champion of the 92 consensus. So he put a special emphasis on the second part, so which is one China with a different interpretation. So according to Ma Ying-jeou's interpretation, they agree to disagree. They agree to disagree at the two levels. The first level, they don't care about which component they are focused on. China, number one, the first part, Taiwan on the second part, no problem. They agree to disagree. At the second level, they disagree, which they agree upon is what? Yeah, how they interpret this one China, or ROC or PRC, freely, flexibly, they've been doing that. So this is providing a huge room for further communication ever since 1992, right? However, for those of you who follow Taiwanese politics, right, there were two very problematic periods of time. In 1999, Li Denghui issued his policy of a special state-to-state relationship, 特殊国与国关系. 3 years later, his successor, President Tsung Chi issued his version about his plan for the Taiwanese future. He called it 一边一国论, one country on each side. So they are moving toward the goal of final independence incrementally from state-to-state relationship. 3 years later, moving to one country on both sides. At that time, there was a 9-year freeze of 9 years freeze of any cross-Taiwan Strait communication at all. So what's happening right now? So we know since Tsai Ing-wen came into power on May 20th, the cross-strait relation has come into a standstill or a state of stalemate. This is nothing new. Tsai Ing-wen very well prepared for it because it happened before, between 1999 and 2008. There was a 9-year freeze of communication between the two. Yeah. So that's why even during the Ma Ying-jeou period of time, from 2008 to early this year, 2016, he was considered the 92 consensus was one of his most salient, celebrated achievement during his presidency for 8 years. So after Ma Ying-jeou stepping down, Tsai Ing-wen took over the office. So we know Tsai Ing-wen not going to accept or to honor the 92 consensus. So that's why we have a standstill going on right now. Yeah.
So is it just the words? Because she has tried to send signals that she accepts the status quo, doesn't intend to upset that, but does not accept the concept of a single China. So is it just the language?
Yeah, we only got 2 hands. Yeah, okay. During Tsai Ing-wen's inaugural speech, indeed, in addition to continuously reassuring the whole world she's going to maintain the status quo. She said the following. So I need to be very careful. Yeah. So she said we will respect the historical fact of the 92 meeting. She didn't say about the outcome of the meeting, the 92 consensus. Instead, she said we're going to respect the historical fact of the 92 meeting. Then followed by this very important remark, word by word. She said we're going to honor the joint acknowledgements and understanding. The joint acknowledgement and the understanding between the cross-straits. Okay, everything's about semantics. If you understand Chinese language, so you will know of course his address was delivered in Chinese, right? It's semantically almost equivalent to consensus. So allow me, we have a huge audience over there, probably know Chinese. Exactly, she said, 共同认知与谅解. Think about this. It is semantically equivalent to 共识, almost exactly the same. That's the way Tsai Ing-wen indirectly, I would say, accept. I think Clay agrees with this, accept the 92 consensus. However, give me 1 minute, quickly. 2 months later, the things happening so quickly. In July, remember, in May, she said she indirectly accepted the 92 consensus. 2 months later, when she was interviewed by Washington Post, what did she say? The first question she was asked, yeah, how do you feel about the deadline? The deadline set up by China for you to accept the 92 consensus. You know, what was her answer? She said the following, yeah, word by word, very carefully. Actually, I remember. She said, it isn't, let me try. She said, it isn't, I don't want to do that. Yeah, this is the political semantics. It isn't likely the government will accept a deadline for conditions that are against the will of the people. Let me do this again. She said, it isn't likely that the government of Taiwan will accept a deadline for conditions against the will of Taiwan. So not only she rejecting the deadline, actually there was no deadline. I don't know what happened to the Washington Post. No deadline set up by Beijing. So this is a very well prepared question and answer. Not only rejecting the deadline, she also rejecting what? The conditions that are against the will of the people, which means what? The consensus is against the will of the people. So I think by that remark, she simply indirectly reject the 92 consensus. Yeah. Thank you for the time.
No problem. But that is the question, because both President Tsai and her predecessor, President Ma, insisted that any change had to be with the consent of Taiwan's 23 million people. This is, of course, a concept that's rejected by Beijing. But it has been affirmed by both the Kuomintang and the Democratic Progressive Party. So you've had that. Let's turn, we only have a few minutes for this panel, but let's turn to the question of the economy, okay, if we might.
I'm not an economist.
Okay, I'll be gentle. I'll be gentle. No. But the reason Tsai Ing-wen is president is in part the split in the Pan-Blue coalition. James Song running, for office definitely had an impact, but it was much more than that. Eric Chu, the ultimate candidate for the Kuomintang, did not run until essentially the Kuomintang adopted a presidential candidate, their first female presidential candidate ever, Madam Hong, and then discarded her and replaced her with Eric Chu, the mayor of the largest city, okay, Xin Taipei. So you definitely had that. The reason Tsai Ing-wen won, and so this goes back to the original question, is disappointment on the economy. President Ma came into power arguing that Taiwan would enjoy consistent high levels of growth. And Taiwan did pretty well during President Ma's administration. The Western world suffers a massive collapse, has all kinds of problems, but Taiwan survives. And Taiwan survives because of the connection to the mainland. All the stimulus spending that you heard Andy Xie railing against, that drove the Chinese economy through that crisis and brought Taiwan along with it. So the question for Tsai now is a domestic one, right? Because she has to please this group of people, 23 million people. So what is her plan to move Taiwan's economy forward?
Well, I'm not an economist, just trying to answer the question. I think it's hopeless. That's why before we come in, I talked to Clay casually. I'm very pessimistic about the title of this panel, Taiwan Looking Forward. Nothing looking forward to. Yeah. The reason is because earlier, as Clay very wisely pointed out, Taiwanese economy has a deeply dependent on the Chinese market. How deeply? I can give you the figures right now. Yeah. The conventional wisdom saying 40% over the years, every year, 40% of a Taiwanese product, the export company, 40% going to China, including Hong Kong, of course. 80% of Taiwanese investment, outbound investment, bound for China. So if you have a relationship like that, if you are a small, tiny little island adjacent to a continental power on the rise, so inevitably, like the Korean, like the Japanese, the South Asian economy, you will be dependent upon this huge market. Yeah. So it's like a steroid. If you don't take steroid, you cannot strive in the field as a spokesperson, right? But if you take steroid, you'll be in trouble. We got Olympic again, just over. Taiwan has faced with this kind of very bizarre situation. Do you want to go to the Chinese market? Yes or no? Either way, going to be bad. So this is not an economical answer. But I think Tsai Ing-wen, even though during the campaigning advertisement, she had proposed a certain policy about the economy, but so far almost 4 months have gone. Yeah, nothing being realized. I don't think this is her fault. Yeah, well, if we want to blame her, only want to blame her policy toward China, but under that circumstances, without recognizing the 92 consensus. So where should she go, or where should Taiwan go? 2 days ago, Clay and me on the phone, we talked about the so-called 新南向政策, the Taiwanese new go south policy. Going where? Going Southeast Asia, 10 countries over there. South Asia, 6 countries over there, including New Zealand and Australia, totally 18 countries, representing a vast market outside China for Taiwan to go. But will her going south policy triumph? No, not at all. For many reasons, it's impossible to realize that policy. So there's nowhere to go. Yeah.
That was a slight elaboration on the word hopeless. In fact, Tsai Ing-wen, she has a multi-pronged strategy. Part of it is to develop the markets, as Professor Ji just talked about, in Southeast Asia, Oceania. And right now, these represent Taiwan's number 6 through number 12 trading partners. And they do a lot of business. But compared to China, China by itself does more business with Taiwan than the 6 combined. China, the two-way trade between the two entities totals $120 billion. So that's definitely it. But also Tsai Ing-wen talks about encouraging entrepreneurship, particularly among young people. And actually, this is where I'll close and turn things over to you folks, is the challenge for Taiwan, the challenge for the mainland, and the challenge in Hong Kong are deeply dissatisfied millennials. Deeply dissatisfied millennials. They took to the streets in the Sunflower movement in Taiwan. They took to the streets in the Umbrella movement in Hong Kong, and they are not happy, many of them are not happy in China, as we heard earlier, because they graduate with degrees. They expect a better life than their parents. And it's very difficult to deliver on those expectations. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for all of these governments to satisfy those expectations. We can go into greater depth, but now it's time to turn to you. Well, our time is pretty much gone, but because we have a short break, maybe those of you who would like are welcome to stay and ask questions.
So what should Taiwan do? You mentioned that the going south doesn't work. They're vulnerable to China. What would be a better alternative?
In my opinion,
Yeah.
accepting the consensus. I have to say that. Accepting the 92 consensus. Back to the going south. You know, this is the only alternative. If you don't want to continuously stuck in China, you have to go south. So why, let me elaborate, why the going south policy will not work. In addition to the Chinese opposition, for sure, Chinese is going to block that policy to punish Tsai Ing-wen and the government, right? But not only that, even without the Chinese opposition, internally, the Taiwanese business person, they're not going to south for a lot of reasons. Number one, they worry about political instability. Instability such as in the case of Burma, in the case of Thailand, kind of Indonesia. They also worry about bureaucratic inefficiency, like the case of India. They talk about that. We can openly talk about that. Another third reason, they consider their personal safety. The crime, safety, or the anti-Chinese Taiwanese sentiment in the case of Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. It's happening right now. So for a lot of reasons, they don't have enough incentive to go south. So they have to go back to China. But under these circumstances, they cannot. Yeah.
Most of the people in Vietnam who were injured in the riots that took place in response to the Chinese oil rig off the coast of Vietnam in the South China Sea were in fact Taiwanese.
Exactly.
Other questions?
Oh, if no more questions, thank you so much.
We'll
take one. We'll take one from
one
one
up
of our
here.
volunteers.
I am shocked. Nobody asked about the South China Sea. The most peaceful and tranquil body of water anywhere.
I was just wondering, how would Tsai being in the office and her new approach to her view on the Taiwanese politics, and also how she conducts as her new in her office, that how is the U.S. gonna take a different approach in your predicament with her being in the office and her new approaches?
You can start.
So you asked two questions. Right? The first one, too general. The Tsai's view about Taiwanese politics is too broad. The second one, American stance. Right? I think no matter how much change is going on, with recognizing 92 consensus, the triangular relationship, China, Taiwan, and the USA, will remain the same. We are into maybe the next 20, 30 years for a lot of strategic, a lot of political, geopolitical reasons. Yeah. So that's the reason why I think Tsai Ing-wen, the moves, the actions she has been taking are very well planned. In her perception, I think she's right. She knew USA needs China as much as they need us. Us means the USA. Yeah. So could you elaborate on that, or you disagree with it? Yeah. Some people talk about the abandonment of Taiwan, right? In the past 3-4 years, I don't think that will happen. Tsai Ing-wen also share the same view, especially when we have a South China Sea standoff. It's not really a standoff. It's a near showdown. You know that, the military showdown between Chinese and the American naval, also Air Force power over there, right? So that's why that's where the Tsai Ing-wen's calculation is based upon. Since the USA need his ally or her ally in the East Asia Pacific, so much so to deal with the rise of China, so especially the standoff between Japan and China over the Diaoyu Island, Diaoyu Tai, and also the China Sea ongoing dispute. So therefore, Tsai Ing-wen think USA will not abandon China. no matter what. Yeah.
I would begin by agreeing with that. There's no chance that Taiwan would be ignored in Washington or Los Angeles. That's not going to happen for a lot of different reasons, mostly rooted in American self-interest, but also the shared ideas with regard to governance, strong economic ties, and for the stability of the region. It would send entirely the wrong signals. So to answer the second part, the United States, Taiwan, and China will continue this dance, no question about that. And the United States policy of strategic ambiguity is likely to continue. A Trump presidency, all bets are off, no one knows what will happen, but my expectation is that strategic ambiguity would continue to be the American policy, not declaring that we would defend Taiwan under any circumstances, and not signaling that we would not defend Taiwan. And that disappoints everybody. The Taiwanese are disappointed, the people on the mainland are disappointed, but it works. The ambiguity works. My final comment would be that I'm more optimistic, I think, than Professor Ji about the domestic prospects in Taiwan. And I'm also quite optimistic that there won't be any violent conflict between Taiwan and the mainland. I don't expect that at all. And the reason I'm optimistic about Taiwan's economic base is because what the Taiwanese have built is really astonishing. The kinds of industries that have been developed, and there's a pressing need for continued innovation. I think some of that innovation is going to continue to be a cross-strait innovation. And in fact, even during President Chen Shui-bian's time in office, when Washington was unhappy, Beijing was unhappy, there was still some progress made in the cross-strait relationship. And so the interests of people on both sides of the strait are very clear. Stability, prosperity, tolerance. Stay tuned.
All right. Thank you so much.